All right, welcome to TikTok with Laku. And today we have one of a kind. So we have a double header. First is Colby Brown, whom I've known for quite a while. And he graduated back in 2015. And he is a regional leader now with Primerica, which is a financial services company. And I love the way they phrase it, for working families. So this is and Colby has been an incredible leader as long as I've known him. In addition to being the best dressed man in Price College distinction. And in addition, we have David Lam, who's also a graduate of Price College. And David graduated back in 2013. And he is also a young dynamic leader. And he is an associate partner at IBM running the cloud strategy practice in North America. And Colby and David have a partnership that we'll talk about as well. So gentlemen, welcome to TikTok with Laku.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
It's great to have both of you here. A special treat for me. And Colby, can you tell us a little bit about your journey to this point? And you can go as far back as you like, as you want. So we'll start with you, and then we'll go to David.
Okay. Yeah. So I was actually born and raised in Muskogee, Oklahoma. So I am a Okie from Muskogee.
Okay.
And I actually grew up in a very unique family. I'm one of 11. So I have 4 brothers and sisters, or I have 4 brothers, 6 sisters. So needless to say, it made for an interesting dynamic growing up there.
You're in the middle.
Yeah, right there in the middle too. So not early enough to get, all the things you want firsthand. You're right there in the middle. So everything's secondhand. Before you know it, you're having to pass those on to the next. So, but it was a good time. We very competitive. We love sports. We love spending time together. We're a very close-knit family. But one thing that we were short on was, as you can imagine, was resources, money, right? And that's actually, when you mention what makes you tick, that was always like a tick for me, because from a young age, I just understood the value, the importance of money. So that always made me interested to try to learn more about how does it work, like where's the instruction manual on how to handle it, how to manage it, like what are you supposed to do with it? But through that curiosity, it led me to keep on discovering and learning more. And I went off to the University of Oklahoma, became the first one to graduate college in my family. So that was a really big milestone for our family. And from there, came on out to Dallas, Texas, where I started consulting. And shortly after that experience, I decided to just go full time, going back to the passion of what makes me tick. And that's helping people learn how to win with their money.
Yeah. And I remember even, just even after you graduated, Colby, right, you wanted to be debt free, and that was a big passion of yours. I remember that from the early days, and you managed to do that. And so.
Yeah. It was actually, it was a group of friends of mine. It was about, 5 or 6 of us, in combined total, we had about $250,000 worth of debt. And when I graduated, I told them it was my mission to make sure that all of us were debt free. And I had about $20,000 personally. In 10 months, I was able to pay mine off. And from all the rest of my friends, the longest it took was 24 months. So in less than 2 years, we all were debt free, and we had over $250,000 paid off. And it was an awesome experience. It was great whenever I accomplished it for myself. But I get a special resurgence, whenever my friends and people who are just close to me achieve that same milestone.
That's great. That's what an awesome story. Wonderful. So David, tell us about yourself. What is your story up until this point?
Gosh, I feel like I can't top that. I've known Colby for a while now, so I knew he had a great story. But my story is a little bit different. If we're gonna go, way to the past, my parents were both immigrants from Vietnam, and they were both part of the refugee camp that came through boats over here. And so I kind of grew up understanding what that meant, because a lot of people don't understand when the refugees came over here. It wasn't just like, a yacht that you're on and you got on a boat and you got over here. I mean, it was these small little boats. They had to go, country to country to finally make it to America. And my mom would always tell me these horror stories of people falling off the boat, dying from starvation, getting eaten by sharks on the, as she was transferring over here. So that's kind of the mentality that she ingrained into me, which was, we worked really hard to get out of, a communist country at the time that wasn't great to the people, and to get over here. And my parents came over without a single penny in their pocket. And, through government subsidies and stuff like that, they were able to build, some wealth, get us into college. And for me, the biggest probably moment of my life that dramatically shifted everything was when I was 12, and I have one older sister. And when I was 12, my dad had passed, and he was actually, he owned a convenience store, and he got shot and killed. And at that moment in time, my mom, who had never gone to school, not even elementary, she didn't know how to run, pay bills and get insurance, all that stuff. So my sister and I, at a very young age, I was 12, she was 13, had to grow up real fast. We had to learn how to pay taxes and all that stuff. And it was kind of that moment in my life where, we talked earlier about the book Before This Flow and what's the intrinsic motivation. I don't know if I necessarily have an intrinsic motivation. It just felt so extrinsic, now that I tell my story. But of that, I had to quickly grow up faster than most of my peers and my friends. I think that gave me a little edge, so to speak. I was always slightly more motivated because, to me, life was about survival. So in order to survive, you had to learn how to be successful. You had to learn how to graduate college. And then I took that with me going forward. Obviously, went to the University of Oklahoma, graduated in 2013. And then once I graduated, that mentality that I had never diminished. It just got heightened. I took that with me into the professional world. Obviously went to consulting after that for a while and progressed my way. And I was always trying to, because I always had to learn how to survive. And part of surviving was having to learn how to survive. I've always had the mentality of constantly learning. And that's allowed me to accelerate through like the consulting field really quickly. In fact, I think I'm the youngest associate partner at IBM, which is, something great to have. And then also now I also run an entire strategy practice for North America, which is great at a young age.
Boy, I mean, this is such a fascinating story as well with, Colby's and yours. It's just, I'm incredibly glad that we're doing both of these together because it's just, there's no one single path to success, right? So you guys have shown that. And so I want to dig a little bit deeper into that from each of your perspectives, and then we'll talk about your joint work together as well. So going back to Colby, so the two arguments are that, to be motivated, to be in the zone when time basically stops and you're doing what you really love, two things have to happen. One is you've got to find the right challenge, and then you've got to skill up to meet that challenge. And that's the argument of the book. And that's really what we're talking about. So how, in your case, Colby, what would be an example of a big challenge that you've gone after, and how have you skilled up to meet that challenge?
Yeah. That's a great question. And I think what actually draws me in the most is the challenge of financial literacy. I look around and I just assume that people knew what to do with money. I just assumed people had their affairs in order. I just assumed that was just a normal thing. So it wasn't until I started to become older and started to realize that more and more people are going through life with no idea. It's not that they don't have a desire to want to do better or to know how to do better. It's just that not enough people are out there teaching them exactly how to win. So it wasn't until, I started to become aware of, just like I said, the importance of money, that then I realized that there was a huge challenge out there. And it was that financial literacy. A lot of people just did not know how to handle their money there. So it gave me, especially at 18 years old, when I first came in contact with a broker who owned several offices down in Oklahoma. He's like, hey, take me under his wing, and he'd teach me everything he knew. So I just became a sponge and soaked up all this information. And the more I learned, the more I was like, man, everybody needs to know this information. It just seemed like, why aren't we screaming this from the rooftops? But being so young, the challenge was then I had to become so knowledgeable because the people that I was talking to in order to help them, start to hit their goals and dreams were twice my age or older, right? So I'm talking to people who are married, kids, they have families and homes. So they're thinking like, what does this young kid know about life? He hasn't even lived long enough. So that the challenge then was, hey, I had to skill up and I had to know my stuff in order to be able to communicate effectively to people, to let them know like, hey, I know what I'm talking about, and show them the value I could bring.
So in terms of skilling up, you basically did a lot of work outside of school, Colby, right? Working with the broker and then trying to get your certified financial planner license and so on. Was that the kind of thing you were doing?
Yep, definitely. I actually became one of the youngest licensed individuals in Oklahoma with my life insurance license. At 18 years old, I was actually still in high school. So while everybody else was kind of finishing up, going to school, going back home, living their life, I would go to school, go to basketball practice at 6 a.m. We'd practice after school. And then after that, I'd go home and start studying for the life insurance exam, So needless to say, I was a little weird, and then from there, I started studying for my Series 6 and 63, and which are my investment licenses, to become a registered representative to help families in that area as well. And literally that hunger, that desire just continued to grow. So the whole time I continued through school, and even when I went off to OU, I would still help families on the side. And I was just doing that on a part-time basis, coaching families and showing them how to get out of debt and how to start saving for a comfortable retirement.
That's a really nice segue to David. So same question for you, David, right? So how did you go about it? What would be an example of a big challenge that you went after? And then how did you skill up to meet that challenge?
Yeah. This is by the way, I really gotta read this book. I really love the way that it's phrased, finding the right challenge and skilling up. It's kind of like a video game analogy, but I went into consulting because I like solving problems that are constantly changing, and that problem solving is the challenge that you're trying to seek out, right? Your challenge is trying to solve problems at the highest level. And that's what I did. And as you progress your career through consulting, you look for more and more difficult challenges. And I could tell you, like, last year I had a client, it was a technology company, and I had to help the CEO grow the business. But when I got into the C-suite and started reviewing their business, it was not so much growth. It was all turnaround. I mean, their business had gone through 10 years of losses. They were positioned in an industry that were dominated by two very large competitors, two very, they're the Fortune 10 companies. And so having that challenge to turn it around and having to go in there, by the way, never having been a CEO in my life, to having him say, hey, help me figure out how to turn around my company, was a very interesting challenge for that to skill up to, right?
Right.
I wrote down what you said, which is, how did you skill up to the challenge? And so now that I have, I run a consulting practice, and I constantly get this question from employees or new people entering the business is, how did you get where you were? What classes did you take? What training? And I've tried to come up with in my career like a mental framework on how to think about it. There's the easy things, which is, can you get, obviously going to college is number one. Number two is, can you continue to get certifications that help build that practice? But really the third thing, which I think is probably the most important thing, whether it be consulting or any other problem solving related field, like if you're a doctor, is the ability to do like critical thinking and problem solving. And I don't know how to like construct a course over that. I really don't. I mean, I've read a lot of psychology on it, but it's just something I don't know how to, for me, it's just, I learned it by being on the job, the concept of dissecting a problem, going through a problem solving analysis, and then just figuring it out. I learned that more through life than I could through a class. So I don't quite know how to skill up in that, besides to say, at some point, to anyone who's watching this that might be a student or not in the workforce, be prepared that life is going to be a great like education for you. And the more that you can talk to people like Colby or myself or yourself and actually listen to their stories around how they solve problems, that probably will be a good repertoire to add to your tool set, right? A good consultant not only knows how to problem solve, but they're really good storytellers. And there's something about being able to tell a story and learn from stories that are so uniquely valuable. We do that a lot in consulting, and I take it for granted sometimes. Being able to articulate a story about, how Jenny runs IBM, or how Arvind now runs IBM, or telling a story about how I turned around a tech company. I don't know. There's some value in that that's not in the books. So
right. Yeah, that's a great point as well. Yeah. So now let's dive into your joint venture with and I was really intrigued by the name, the Alchemy Partners. So alchemy I'm assuming from the medieval, turning base metals into gold. That's kind of the. So tell me about it, so I can understand what this is.
Yeah. I mean, you hit it right on the head. We actually pulled our name from the ancient practice of alchemy. So I think we were inspired. We read the book called The Alchemist, which is a really great book. I highly recommend it. Right. But I just fell in love with the concept of alchemy, turning base metals into gold, taking a resource and making it a more valuable resource. So as David and I came together and were brainstorming ideas of what to name our partnership and what do we want to call it, what's our goal, the Alchemy Partners just kind of hit, and it had a nice ring to it. We're taking families, we're taking whatever position that they're in, and we're showing them how to improve upon that and become more valuable in a sense with the same resources that they bring to the table. So in essence, we're performing alchemy on
and converting it into financial wealth
exactly. Kind of, you asked us earlier, what's a challenge to make this scale up, and I think a big challenge that we have is really bringing hope to the hopeless, because in the area of finance, a lot of people feel lost and they feel confused and they just feel like their goals and dreams are so out of touch and that they just can't even reach it. So then what that makes them do is they give up on themselves before they ever truly have a chance. So a big part of what we do is just breathing life back into people and letting them know that like, hey, you can do it, and empowering them to take control and then to manage that money correctly. So then that way they put themselves in the best position to succeed. It doesn't happen overnight, but like David mentioned, in a matter of a month or two, you can start to see a drastic difference in your life.
So that brings us to our final four.
So before pandemic, it was jiu-jitsu. I'm a big student judo. Because it's pandemic, it's woodworking. Something I can just do at home. And I moved back to Oklahoma now, so I can just woodwork. So there's a pre and post for sure.
Okay, all right. Okay, so you might go back in a post pandemic world. You might go back to jiu-jitsu.
Unsafe to grab random strangers. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. How about you, Colby?
So for me, I'm really big. I love to travel. So even during the pandemic, we actually just got back from Mexico, but we were safe. I wore my mask and we put all the precautions in place. So favorite book would probably have to be Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. That was actually the first book I read. I was 17 years old, and once I read that book, it completely changed my mindset and actually set me on the path that I'm on today. So Think and Grow Rich.
There's a book called Wild at Heart, which there's a story behind why I ended up reading that, but Colby recommended it to me. Long story short, but it's about it's just about why men are some of the way they are. There's a really good show called Tiger King. I'm just kidding. Kingdom. It's a Korean show, but people like to call it a zombie show. But the great thing about the show itself, it's about a prince who happens. There's a thing going on where they're trying to dethrone him, and zombies happen to be in the movie. Whereas usually it's a zombie movie with a story. This is a story with some zombies.
So I've actually been watching the Harry Potter series, actually. So
you're just catching up, Colby, huh?
Yeah. We literally on HBO, they just released the whole series on there. So we decided, hey, let's just start. It makes for a great date night. So we just go ahead and watch a movie, for our date night, and we've been just kind of going through the series there. So we're on number 5, Goblet of Fire. We just finished that one. So that's my love language, man. When you talk about food, so
yeah, you got to pick one.
yeah, that's so tough. I really think have you ever been to Gloria's?
Yeah.
Okay, Gloria's. I just had the churro there, like for dessert, and I think that just topped my list of like most favorite things of all time.
I don't have a favorite, but I will say this: if I were the last meal I would have on Earth, it would be It's gonna sound so over the top. Hong Kong style lobster. If you've never had it, try it. If you like lobster, if you're not allergic to pork or whatever, it's really good.
But yeah, thank you guys so much for taking the time, and congratulations, Colby, on your wedding, and
Thank you.
and much success to both you guys. Stay in touch.